And we welcome back Jamey Eisenberg as we recap an all-important week 15 in fantasy, especially those still in the race. And speaking of the race, one team is well ahead of the others and took home the first divisional crown of the season in the San Francisco 49ers, and their quarterback has only strengthened his MVP case. Now, some people, I feel like, Jamey, overlook what Brock Purdy has done given his playmakers, things like Christian McCaffrey, looking at Deebo Samuel, the pieces that he has around him. But has he proven that he is that guy in fantasy as well?
Well, he certainly has, and he actually was asked after the game, who's the MVP, and he said Christian McCaffrey. And I think a lot of fantasy managers would probably agree just because he's lived up to the expectations. But I always like to look at who's the fantasy MVP as someone who has come out of nowhere and sort of exceeded expectations. And Brock Purdy has done that by leaps and bounds, just continues to have a magical season. And really next week's going to be interesting as he takes on the Ravens. But when he's been at home, he's been an absolute stud. So I don't think anybody's benching him or getting away from him as he takes on Baltimore in week 16. But coming off of week 15 with another 4-touchdown game, relying on his playmakers, why is that a problem? Why is that really a problem to say, I'm going to lean on the best players on my team and let them make plays, but put them in position to make plays? So Brock Purdy is strengthening his case for the NFL MVP, and he's definitely strengthening his case to be the fantasy MVP. And spinning it forward to 2024, he's going to be a top 12 quarterback, no question about it. So it's been fun to watch this season unfold for him. I hope it continues. We'll see how far it goes in the NFL playoffs, but for the fantasy playoffs, Brock Purdy's winning a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah, and definitely helping out a lot of us also in fantasy. Just going to throw that out there. Okay, we just talked about a veteran running back in Christian McCaffrey. But how about another week of strong outings for sophomore ball carriers? James Cook put up 179 yards and a touchdown on the ground, the most by a Bills running back since Fred Jackson in 2010. Kyron Williams, 152 yards and a touchdown. Rashad White, 89 yards. What's been cooking with these year two running backs in fantasy lately?
Yeah, I figure we talked about this last week. Why not just continue the theme? And it's been fun to watch these guys and how they perform. Certainly for James Cook, since Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator, he's been an absolute stud and was the best player on the field tonight against a really good Cowboys run defense. So the fact that he's been involved in the pass game, caught a touchdown as well, continues to dominate on the ground and just continues to improve as a runner. So it's been awesome to see this continue, and very easy schedule starting next week continuing next week, against the Chargers. Then he gets the Patriots, and then we'll see how things go for the Bills in terms of can they beat the Dolphins and maybe get into the NFL playoffs. But for the fantasy playoffs, you're starting him without hesitation. Rashad White's been a star really since week 6 and just continues to be one of the best fantasy running backs. So it was great to see him have another strong game against a good Packers run defense. But what he does in the passing game and starting to improve as a rusher, he's had one of the breakout campaigns for this year. And the same with Kyron Williams, another guy that we talked about with Brock Purdy, just coming out of nowhere and looking like a fantasy MVP. Unfortunately, had a couple of fumbles today, so I hope that doesn't cost him. It did cost him a little bit of playing time, but as he proved, better than Royce Freeman, the best running back for the Rams and one of the best playmakers for the Rams as well. So these 3 sophomore running backs have helped a lot of fantasy managers, and I think they'll keep it going for another couple weeks as they hopefully lead you to a championship.
Okay, well, there's another player that I think a lot of people would hope would lead them to a championship, because I know fantasy managers were devastated by the news this morning that Tyreek Hill was ruled out for the game against the Jets. I might or may not have been playing against him, but it was good news for Jaylen Waddle owners. 142 yards on 8 receptions and a tutty. If Tyreek misses more time, does that make Waddle a must-start going forward?
Absolutely. For the most part, he's a must-start guy anyway. I didn't necessarily bump him up too much because of the Tyreek Hill absence. I thought that might be a little bit more tough coverage for him, meaning they could slant, some of the guys, safeties toward that side of the field. And, with Sauce Gardner and Reed, it would be tough for, Jaylen Waddle to have a huge game. But he makes the big play over the top. We got a little bit of the scare when he left for an injury, but he came back in and was just an absolute star. So no Tyreek Hill, no problem for Waddle. Unfortunately, Tua Tagovailoa did not have a huge game because Raheem Mostert was doing a lot of the work on the ground, especially near the goal line. But Waddle stepping up when he was needed, and that was great to see. So we'll see what happens in week 16. I would guess that Tyreek Hill, since he was close to playing, will play. They obviously did not need him to beat the Jets. They'll need him to beat the Cowboys and the Ravens in the next few weeks, and then the Bills in week 18. But with or without Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle will be in your lineup. But if Tyreek Hill does, for whatever reason, miss next week's game, he's got top 10 upside.
All right. Well, let's switch gears to another position on offense, because 2024 has been a year of change. So much for the year of the Kittles and the Kelseys. How about the McBrides and the Laportas? Trey McBride set a new single-season franchise record for receptions by a tight end against the 49ers, and he finished the night with 102 yards on 10 receptions. Sam Laporta was instrumental in the Lions' win on Saturday over the Broncos. 56 yards, but three touchdowns. Maybe for those whose seasons might be over, or maybe just trying to get ahead of next year, Are those two names we could see at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to tight ends next year?
I think so, and Travis Kelce, as we're seeing, slowing down a little bit, teams are doing a great job of taking him away, while these two youngsters are certainly doing a great job of finding ways to get open, helping their quarterbacks and helping a lot of fantasy managers. So this might be 1-2 in terms of the rankings for 2024, with McBride first and Laporta second. We'll see how things go for the Chiefs and Kelce. You still have TJ Hawkinson in a great spot with Kirk Cousins when he does come back, whoever the quarterback is there for Minnesota. Obviously, you'll still have some of those guys, like you mentioned, the George Kittles of the world. But these young tight ends, and throw Dalton Kincaid in there as well, have really stepped up in a big way. So the way that this Cardinals offense is operating, looking like Kyler Murray, most likely the quarterback next year, Murray to McBride, I think McBride puts him at the top of the rank list, at least as of now. I know it's probably a little bit reactionary, but he's just been absolutely a superstar. And then Laporta, as long as, Ben Johnson might be gone for the Lions, but the system should be in place. Say Jared Goff looking for Laporta right now. Just these two guys, the way that they've been performing really for the majority of the season, but certainly down the stretch, this could be the 1-2 list at the tight end rank position with McBride at the top.
Okay, so I just had to look at the date, so I make sure I take note of this. It was on December 17th when you made note that next year, keep an eye out on these young tight ends, because in the first couple of rounds of the draft, those big names are the ones that are off the board, but these might be the names that we might need to circle and really could look to do some damage in 2024. Jamey, thanks as always for the insight.
Got it.
And if you want more from Jamey, like what we just got right there, you're going to want to check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast. Jamey's joined by Heath Cummings, Dave Richard, and Adam Azer throughout the year, giving you all the advice you need to win your league. And it's available wherever you get your podcasts.